Well, welcome to another edition of the Ambitious Dads podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Hittner. After more than 200 conversations with fathers, I realized we're just not talking enough. Not about our fears, nor our ambitions, about how our kids are really doing or how we're holding up in the middle of all of it. So, this podcast is for dads trying to build something meaningful and be present at home. The ones like us that are carrying a lot, questioning if we're doing enough, and craving honest conversations without the filters. If that's you, you are not alone and you are in the right place. So let's figure this out together. So for today, that means having a wonderful conversation with Joshua. And Joshua is a father, coach, entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur at that. And I believe you started your career as a 5-year-old working in your family's garden center. And then at 18, according to your bio, you and your father and your brother started a design company called Timber Rock Landscaping. And then after about 15 years there, you started your own independent company called Master Plan Outdoor Living, which is a design and management firm focused on outdoor spaces, which has become very, very successful. And you also started another business in 2020, a unique coaching program specifically for people in your industry, right? For landscapers and hardscapers and outdoor living professionals called Yes Express Sales Academy. And since starting this journey, you have helped over 100 business owners and teams see a lot more success. So, of course, that is the business side of his story and the personal side. Joshua, I'll let you introduce that and tell me a little bit about your family.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jeff. And that's such an honor to be here and to talk to other dads that are trying to figure this out as we go, right? We're taught in the beginning that we need to provide and protect. That's deep in our masculine DNA. And, that comes out in many forms. And I'm celebrating this year 20 years married to my beautiful wife. And it's been such a big blessing, but a massive growth challenge throughout all of that, right? And the man that I said at the altar I do to the man that stands here today is not just 360 degrees different. I'm beyond that when it's come to change, right? And the growth and the fact that each day we need to continually look for how we improve ourselves just a little bit, just 2 millimeters. How can we grow? Because if we're not growing, we're dying. So when it comes to that, change is scary and taking on new challenges is scary. But at the end of the day, the important part is that we're continuing to show up. That's sometimes the hardest part, is just putting your shoes on and just going another day when it seems like you can't go. I have a saying when it comes to raising kids, and my sons now are 15 and 18. And in the beginning, I had no idea. I didn't grow up around kids, right? It was in the garden center working. My brother was 18 months younger than me. So we were effectively the same age, right? And we didn't have a lot of young siblings running around or any cousins or any of that stuff. We worked 7 days a week. So I didn't have a whole lot of experience around young kids. So I knew that when my wife and I were talking about having kids, that I'd be like, the first 5-10 years is going to be interesting because I don't have any experience with that. I was like, but after that, I can't wait to take them under my wing and to teach them and to go out and do stuff with them and all that. So anyway, through the grace of God, I had the patience and an amazing wife that certainly made all of that much more enjoyable. But reason why I say all of that is because one thing I learned with kids, specifically young ones, is they're going to demand everything of you when you have nothing left to give. Right? It's going to be that long, hard day that you just had that day at the office or out wherever, whatever you're doing. And you come home and all you want to do is just stop. You just want to disappear. You don't want to talk to anybody. You don't want to deal with anything. And you come home and your wife needs you to do something. Okay, I'm used to that. And the kids just want to play and they're happy and full of joy and you just want to disappear. And we as men, we have to manage that. We have to think about, okay, how are we going to show up right now? And I say that because that's after years of introspection. But when I was young, just starting out in this, my kids were little running around my feet. I didn't have that introspection. I just knew that I wanted to stop. I wanted everything to stop. I was so self-focused. Well, because that's all I ever learned, right? Before you're married, it's like you're focused on yourself and maybe your family. And then you get married, then it's just about you go from a me to a we. But then it's like, all right, she's an adult, you're an adult. You can kind of manage life that way. But then kids, they come to you in this beautiful way of needing everything from you. And you have to dig deep and figure out what kind of man are you going to show up as in those moments. And I failed left and right with that. I I was not prepared for it. I showed up selfish. I showed up distant. I did a lot of those things. Now, I was always the guy that was there. I made time for my family, but I wasn't present with them. I was thinking work. I was thinking my next achievement. I was thinking whatever I was thinking, but there was often times that I wasn't emotionally there. So it was and then I would feel the regret and the guilt of that. It was this big cycle of me being more important at work than I was at home, and this whole circle of that. I'm like, okay, good, I'm achieving over here, but I'm slacking over there, and I'm achieving over here, but I'm slacking over there, and then it's like this guilt circle that kept going around, and that led me into to vices, to alcohol, and to weed and things like that, just to kind of self-medicate and trying to make sense of it all. And it, yeah, it was quite a time in life that it definitely changed me as a human, and made me realize that I'm not the most important thing.
Um, Thank you first of all for sharing all that. And that's the type of like vulnerability that we need to have more of, right?
Mhm.
And that's exactly why we're having this conversation. Can you tell me what it was like a little bit more about like recognizing that sort of vicious cycle
Mm.
and how you started to figure out like how to grow and how to change? Obviously there was a bottom.
Yep. Mhm.
Just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was my average day was work, and then whatever I had left, my family got the scraps, right? And um, I mean, I'm blessed to coach a lot of people, and I know that that's such a common thing. I didn't realize this, Jeff, at the beginning. I just thought I was broken. I thought I was doing everything wrong. I thought I just wasn't strong enough or didn't have what it took to be a father and to be a husband and to be a good man. Like I honestly didn't know if I had what it took. So it was this constant challenge. And it wasn't until I started to see the writing on the wall and I started this regret was just overpowering the weight of the world, of the weight of the business succeeding, the weight of being a father and showing up for my wife. And all of that was just so heavy that I was like, I need to do something. So I picked up a book and somebody had recommended it to me. And I wasn't a big reader back then. I have a hard time focusing at times back in those days specifically. It was like to sit down and read a book. Are you crazy? Like
Mhm.
I have so many other things I could be doing. I'm like, I'm up. I like to move around. Like even at a podcast, I'm standing because I'm used to moving.
Yeah.
I'm an action guy, right? So sitting down and read a book was sounded like torture to me. But somebody sent me this book and they said it's called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber, very popular book. And I read through that book and it hooked me. This idea of business being something more than just a job, but it's something that empowers more people and you can create systems and processes and all that. And it intrigued me because I'd been in business for, I don't know, at least 10, 12 years at that time. And I had seen all the reasons why they say start a business, this is going to be great. I just didn't want to work for anybody, right? I wanted to work for myself and my family. But what I didn't realize is that I was basically signing up for a job, right? And to me as the boss, right? So it's like, so I basically owned my job, but I like to say that I was a business owner because that sounded really sexy at cocktail parties. So anyway, I read this book, and at the end, it talks about having the opportunity to work with a coach. So I reached out to him. First time I've ever done this. Like I was an island. As a man, I was an island. I managed everything in my own head and on my own shoulders. I felt like I had to. If I wasn't, I was weak. All that kind of stuff. Right. That was the rhetoric going on in my mind. That's what the inner critic was saying. You're not strong enough. That's why you need help. All this BS. Right. And I started breaking out of that pattern and I said, you know what, maybe it is time to have a coach. So I reached out to that agency and they set me up with a guy. His name was John Guancy, um, my first coach. And we started talking about stuff. And it was really odd for me to open up to somebody, especially another man, about things like weakness and things that I was struggling with. And I was very guarded in that conversation with him. But there was a practice that he asked me to do. He gave me an opportunity to write my own eulogy,
Mhm.
right? And I thought he was nuts because I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, when somebody dies, people stand up in front and they say something about the person. And he says, I would love for you, if you're open to it, to spend some time this next week and write your own eulogy and we can talk about it or not talk about it next week. That's totally up to you. And I'm like, dude, you're out of your mind. Like, I don't do stuff like that. I'm gonna blow through this. No big deal. Like, yeah, he was a good guy. He did this, this, and this. He built these businesses. His family loves him, blah, blah. And that was it. So, Jeff, I sat down on a Saturday morning. I'll never forget this. I sat down on a Saturday morning with my two sons running around. They were probably 3 and 5, roughly, on a Saturday morning at the table. And I started writing this out. And as much as I tried to just blow through it, I couldn't. That guilt was coming back up, that regret. all of the times that I know I could have showed up better as a father was showing up in that moment. And I was writing it down, and tears started coming to my eyes, and I started to break down, and I started to cry. And these kids are running around the house giggling and laughing, and I'm barely holding myself together at the table writing this stuff down because I'm writing out the man, because I'm thinking about who's saying this. This isn't just something I'm writing down. Is my wife in front of the crowd saying this? Is it my sons that are saying this? Right? What would I want them to have remembered about me? The guy that's always working, the guy that's always doing stuff, the guy that is there, but not really. He's physically there, but not emotionally. He doesn't ask me about stuff because everything else is more important. What kind of guy do I want them to remember? And man, did that break me? Because I'm sitting there thinking, I am not even close to that man right now. I am not even close to it. So after that exercise was done, and then I shared with John, and we talked back and forth, and it really shifted a paradigm inside of me. I'm like, you know what, Jeff, I don't have all the rest of my life to figure this out. I need to start prioritizing what's the most important to me. And while work is always going to be there, and it's important for provision and for protection of my family, at the same time, at the end of it all, it's really about my family. Well, it's about God first, and then my family, of course. So it's like, okay, looks like I've been climbing a ladder for most of my life, climbing, 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 trying to get to the top of this ladder. And I realized that I put my ladder against the wrong building. So then I was like, okay, now what does one do if that happens? I'm like, well, you step back down the ladder and you set it against another building and start climbing again. So that's what I decided to do, is to
Well,
start
let's
being,
pause there for a second because that is a pretty profound acknowledgement, right? Like you've put your ladder up against the wrong building is decades of investment, right?
Mhm.
And decades of like kind of a foundational idea of who you are. So when you realize that, what did it take to move that ladder? Because that is a pretty vulnerable and profound position to put yourself in.
well, what I realized is being at the top of that ladder and looking out, it wasn't going to give the future that I truly wanted deep down. I didn't have clarity around what that looked like, Jeff. I didn't have any idea. I just thought that the guys, my position in this family is to provide and protect, and I'm doing both of those things well. So good, check, check, good to go. But what I was not doing is showing up fully emotional and vulnerable for my children and for my wife. I was checking the boxes, but I wasn't showing up fully present, right? So, and I knew that. I think we all know that, right? We're prioritizing things, 8 hours
Mhm.
of sleep, 8 hours of work. What are you doing with the other 8 hours? Are you scrolling? Are you saying hi to your family? Are you playing cards? Like, are you actually there? Are you not there? Are you trying to look like you're doing stuff? Like, what is it really? And so if that's the case, it's like I knew that I was putting it against the wrong building. And I said, look, I'm not going to be able to live with myself if I don't make a change. And that change, it came kicking and screaming because I only knew one pattern. I
Right.
only knew one path. Who is this other guy that I'm supposed to become now? Like, how is that going to happen? I don't even know who he is. I don't have much touch with him because I wasn't that empathetic or that emotionally connected. I didn't understand. So I was like, okay, somehow the women have figured this out, Jeff. You know that, right? So it's like they're,
Sure.
they're just born and raised. I mean, the feminine is just so beautiful in the fact and the way God created us both so different, yet so beautifully connected, like a yin and a yang. But what I was finding is that because I wasn't connecting with that and I wasn't there, that my wife was stepping up a lot more in some of the positions of the masculine that I wasn't. And that really, it pissed me off. Like there was times when I'm just like, man, I just want you to kind of step down from this. And she's like, well, if I do step down from this, then who's going to do it? And I'm like, holy crap, that's really my responsibility. That's my role in this. But I've been slacking on those things because I've been so self-important. So anyway, I say all of those things because as I realized, this realization came over me and I'm like, I need to shift. But now I need something to look at to say, okay, this is where I'm going now. I have
Yeah.
clarity that this isn't the way I want to go. Let's start focusing on that. That's when I started my 10-year journey of self awareness and improvement in my spiritual walk and all of that. So it really, everything kind of lit from that moment. If I look back, that was really the crux moment, the moment of pivot that shifted away from focusing on just getting what I thought I was supposed to do to what I'm actually supposed to be doing.
What did it feel like to learn how to connect with your emotions and with empathy and talk a little bit about that journey in the context of your family? Because that's a big one that I notice lots of dads that I speak
Yeah.
to going through.
I was afraid of it, to be honest. I'm a guy who feels, right? It's one of my superpowers, but I've been pushing it down forever because I was afraid that it looked like weakness. right? So I'd be the guy that at a funeral when I was young and people would pass away in our family and we would go as a family to a funeral, I would watch the other men. And other men in my family were stoic. They were, crying was a weakness. So you wouldn't see that. I mean, I can remember clearly my grandfather laying there in a coffin and my father and my grandfather standing there doing their best not to keep their stuff together. And I'm sitting there barely holding my shit together, right? I'm barely holding it together. And I'm looking around as a young man, I'm looking up to other men for what am I supposed to do in a situation? This is what we do. Women do the same thing. You're looking for models in your environment for how should I be acting right now? And then you start making those your rules. And I did that and I watched and I saw them not showing empathy, not showing any kind of weakness, if you will, crying or show any kind of emotion. So I figured that's just what it is to be a man. Like this is what it is. But inside it was destroying me. And what I realized on my journey, it took longer than just a year. It's been about 8 or 9 years till I realized I'm like, no, God created me in a way that I feel. I feel people's energy before they know it or before others would. And that is a superpower, not a weakness. And in that feeling of other people's either woundedness or their need for something more, or they're asking or thinking about something that they don't know how to ask the question to, like all of those things allow me the blessing of being able to help somebody go through that process that they weren't able to step over that threshold before. Right. So, but I didn't see it like that back then. I saw it as weakness when I saw the other men around me. So what it was like, it was scary because I'm like, holy moly, I don't have a model for this around me. I don't know other men that
Right.
do this stuff. And it wasn't until I started training with, like, I was in Tony Robbins' world for a long time and T. Harv Eker and my current coach now, Keith Wagner and Harley Elmore. And like, what really started to resonate with me is if I looked around at people that I thought were successful, not just financially, but spiritually and as family men, it I needed to have more of them in my life. I needed to have mentors and people that could show me the way. It's either that or I'm going to be taking my entire life to try to figure this out. And if I can compress decades into days and pull from their knowledge because they've been through this before, why wouldn't I? Right. But that was not my thinking growing up on the farm, right? On my farm, it was just you work hard, you make money, and you just repeat that 7 days a week. So to get into the emotional side was scary and it took a lot of battling inside, a lot of saboteurs, those negative voices that are trying to
Mhm.
hold you back, and those sages that are saying, you got everything you need, brother. You got this. God created you perfect in his image. Just keep moving forward. No, you're not. You're not worthy. I can't believe you think you can do this. Who do you think you are? Like this back and forth. We all have that. We all have that inner voice that is back and forth. And for most of my life, the inner critic was winning. Right. And now I've figured out how to flip that.
And how do you bring it to your children now? How do you so you're now the model for them, obviously. But was in what intentional ways did you model that type of like emotional connection
Mm.
with your kids, especially for the dads listening that, this is a kind of an early exposure for them to understand like how they can be leaders and still be connected to their emotions and not kind of shut down that part of them that produces love and empathy in that way.
Yeah. I mean, the highest virtue of all is love, right? So at the end of the day, when it comes to our kids specifically, and I've got two boys, I don't have daughters, so I wouldn't know, but I imagine it'd probably be easier for a dad to be more emotional with his daughter or to like that. Again, I'm only thinking, I don't know that. But as for young men, how do you raise them up tough but present? How do you raise them up tough and purposeful? How do you raise young men in today's society with values and morals and independence, their ability to
Are
go out and provide for themselves, right? All of that kind of stuff. How do you do that in today's society? So, as you notice, I'm asking questions because that's what the growth mindset does. How can we do this versus we can't do that today? There's no way you can do that. I mean, look at just turn on social media. You'll see how broken the world is. I can't believe my kids are in this time at this place that they've got this broken world. But you know what? Our parents said the same thing. And so did their parents. And so did their parents. Change is scary. I get that. So what do we do as men is we have to show up as those beacons of light. We have to be there as purposeful men that have our stuff under control. We have
and do you
self-control.
remember specific examples with your boys that you can kind of um, talk to where you really felt like, oh, this is an opportunity for me to show this kind of more emotional connected side so that I can model it?
Excellent question. Yes, my youngest son, Oliver, he's been a hunter and a warrior since day one, right? He was the kid at 5 years old that I gave him a benzomatic blowtorch because he loved to start fires. And those parents listening would be like, what the heck?
As a boy dad, I'm like, yep, I totally hear
Right?
you.
But it's like, so he loved it. But here's the thing with a benzomatic, he saw me using it and he said, Papa, can I use that? And I said, well, sure. And I give it to him and I show him how to use it safely. And then he uses it and forgets and grabs the hot end and burns his hand. He doesn't do that again. We then go back through the safety protocols with it. We have protocols and standards, and he eventually can take it out with my permission. Give him a little bit more leash. Okay, cool. Papa, can I take it out without you watching? Sure, go ahead. I'm still watching through the window. And eventually I let it go, right? The student, the teacher, and the observer, right? We're going through the three modalities. And it's like, all right, what's the best way to put this away? What's the best way to do this? Should you always have a bucket of water next to your fire? Like all of these things, right? So we teach. This is the presence that I wasn't able to understand before that I now fully understand. It's being there for those moments. So he's always been like that. He's had pocket knives like you've never believed. He's got a whole arsenal. He had a machete by the age of 7, like because we went through the same process, right? This is what happens if you misuse this. This is what happens, like all of that. So he became very responsible at a young age with things that are lethal, right? And so there was a day when he's like, Pop, I want to shoot a squirrel. And I was like, all right, cool. We've shot plenty of guns before and he wants to shoot, but he got a crossbow for Christmas, a small crossbow. And that was something that we watched together. And then he eventually can work out and then he's doing it himself. So one day I work from home. So there's one day he comes down to me and he's like, Papa, I just shot a squirrel. Like he was beyond excited and nervous and scared, like all at one time. He's maybe 8 years old by this point, 8, 9 years old. He comes down, he's like just jumping around. He shot the squirrel. The problem is when he shot it, he didn't kill it, right? So that it's laying on our deck and he comes out and he's like, come here, look. And I went up with him, immediately stopped everything, went up and we sat there looking at it. I said, and that squirrel is breathing like it's gasping for air. It's gasping for air. And he's scared, he's sad, he's excited, everything at one time. And I'm looking at it and I looked at him and I said, okay, you put an arrow through his body. What do we do next? He just looks at me. He's like, I don't know. I'm like, well, what do you think the right thing to do next is? The animal's going to die. What are you going to do? He's like, I think we should kill it. I said, how would one do that? So we sat down next to each other with the squirrel between us. And I said, all right, how would one kill a squirrel? You put the arrow through it. This is your responsibility, Oliver. How does this work? And he's crying and excited and scared all at the same time. So he pulls out his knife. I'm like, all right, how would you do this? I said, well, you'd cut his throat. Okay. He couldn't do it. He was shaking. He was scared. He was sad. He was nervous. So I said, let me have your hand. We'll do it together. We killed a squirrel together. And we sat there and I started to tell him stories about the last time I went deer hunting. And that was the thing growing up. That was a rite of passage in my family, was deer hunting. And at 12 years old, the young men would go up to the camp and we would go hunting. And crazy enough, we could actually drink beer at 12, which still doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, it was just one of those things, right? We got introduced to a lot of cool things. That's what the young men did back in those days. And so the last time I went deer hunting, I shot a deer and didn't kill it. It was a small doe and it didn't kill it. And as soon as I shot it at a distance, my rifle, it started to bay, like it just started to scream. And this deer was screaming and it did something to me because Jeff, I didn't need the meat. Right. And how much stronger am I because I can kill this little deer? It's like this. It was a lot of stuff going on inside of me. I had hunted for years. I've killed many, many animals, but it was like this one kind of got me. So I had to walk up to it. I had the opportunity to walk up to it and end its pain. And as it's banging, looking at me in the eyes, I put a bullet between its head, between its eyes and killed it. And I sat there thinking, God, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And it shifted something inside of me. So I shared that story with him, exactly that story about how I was emotional during that time and how that changed the way that I did things in the future because it shifted something inside of me. So we sat there as a son and father and just had that conversation. And you could tell something shifted inside. So we went up and I said, we have a rule in this house that if you kill it, you eat it. So let's go. Let's start skinning this thing. So we went upstairs and he had never done that before. So we went upstairs and put it on the kitchen table. And we started skinning this thing out and gutting it and all that stuff. And he started turning green. He was like, he's running to the bathroom to get sick. He couldn't do it. I'm like, come on, kid, you killed this thing. This is what death is. When you're preparing an animal to eat, this is what needs to be done. He couldn't hold his lunch for nothing. He come back out, he turned green, go back in again. I said, let's go, kid, get out here with your knife. And it wasn't a punishment. That's not the goal, but there's consequences to things. Our job as fathers is to help move our children from the innocent stage, which is when they're young and innocent and everything is perfect, to the responsibility stage,
Mm.
right? They've got our main mission in the first few years of life is to move them from innocence to responsibility. And the way that happens is by giving them responsibility and having them be accountable. So this was a way of doing that. If you're going to kill an animal, there's an entire protocol after that. It's not just for fun and frivolousness and, oh, look cool, I just killed buddy. Hold the squirrel up and get a picture so like I show my friends. No, there's a purpose to all of this. So we did that. We skinned it out. And eventually we cooked it on the grill and his friends came over and believe it or not, they ate it, but he was proud of it. But it was an entire process. It was an entire process. And it helped. It definitely empowered me as a father and it empowered him as a son. And it's stories like that. It's taking the time. He came down to my office. I could have been like I used to be. I'm busy, kid. I'm busy, kid. I'll come out when I'm done work and I'll come to talk to you. I dropped everything and I went and had that moment with him. So listeners out there, if you're listening to this, you're like, man, I wish I connected with my kids. Make them a priority. If you've got concentric circles around your life, thinking about what gets your highest attention, make your family one of those highest attention rings. That if something happens, you shut everything down. Business will be there tomorrow, and you go focus on them. And you spend the time present with them. That's what I learned along this journey from a selfish focus to a family and God focus was the fact that I just need to stop at times and go be where I need to be and be fully present so I can have those moments.
I hear in this story that also when you had self-discovery, right? When you had this moment of growth that you then immediately went and shared that with your family, right? Which is another powerful point of connection around learning and growth mindset, as you said. And I also love this idea of moving from innocence to responsibility and accountability, which is obviously something that is become a big issue in parenting these days.
Mhm.
So really appreciate how you described it. When you think about your children now, especially as they're 15 and 18, like what's keeping you up at night? What's the biggest things that are keeping you up at night?
Well, next stage of life. Do I have them prepared well enough for the world? And, what does that look like? That's one of the things. I can't say that I stay up at night with it. I feel like that's pretty ironed out. But, my son Oliver, I happen to be blessed to be the scout leader at our local Boy Scouts. And so I get to see him with his friends and they do all kinds of stuff. And we trade innocence for responsibility there too, which is a great learning phase for them. But also my little son Jacob, he's not outdoorsy, but he's super smart. And he's a guy that's been entrepreneurial from the beginning. My wife and I are both entrepreneurial. So both our kids have started multiple small businesses like mowing lawns and basic stuff. And my oldest, he had a comic book business where him and his buddy made comic books and they'd sell them on the street. And he was maybe 8 or 9 when he was doing that. Even got the mayor involved. Like it was pretty cool. Now he's building websites and he's doing extremely well. He's putting money away for his next phase of life where he wants to move out and start his independence. When we would take our kids through the airport, oftentimes I see families with kids and the parents are managing everything and they're like, all right, kid, just follow me. Don't get far away. I'm afraid I'm going to lose you. All this, right? It's a crazy, busy, bustling place. And there's a lot of people, a lot of kids, a lot of stuff going on. My wife and I had a different approach to that. We get to the airport and we tell the kids as soon as they could walk, take me to my gate, lead me, take me to
I
my
love
gate.
that.
Right. So what I'm trying to say to the dads out there is there's teaching moments every single moment of your life. If you look for them, if you are open to finding them.
And how do you because yes, and it requires this pause in what is often instinctual, which is solutioning, right? Like my kid presents me with something, I want to offer a solution. No, my kid presents me with something, I need to take a breath and say, how can I turn this from me solutioning to them leading? So, first of all, how did you come to that? Because it
Yeah.
sounds, I would imagine, as you described in your early parenting, that was not the case. And then
Mm.
how do you come to that and remind yourself of that on a regular basis? I'm
Well,
sure
I'd
it's
love to take
natural now. Yeah.
well, I'd love to take all the credit, but that was my wife's idea, right? She's just brilliant beyond any regard. She is just the most amazing, beautiful woman I've ever met. I'm so blessed to have her as my wife. But she grew up in Germany, so a little bit different. Their independence is much higher value there. They become independent very young. They drive their bikes. They ride their bikes to school every day. They're completely independent very young. So this idea isn't something that I came up with. It's something that I helped encourage even more like throughout, but it was definitely her idea. So, but we'd get there and be like, well, we could walk them through the airport or we could have them figured out. Eventually, one day, we're going to want them to be self-sufficient, don't we? Isn't it our goal to create responsible men that'll contribute to society? Well, how does that start? It starts as early as possible. So they would walk and they'd go the wrong way, and then we turn around. I wouldn't be like, hey, kid, you're going the wrong way. You made a mistake. You're an idiot. I'm going to take care of this, because that's what I would want to do. But that doesn't really make the impact I'm looking for in our children. So we empower them like, hey, do you see A23 this way? It says ED and F. Which one comes first? A, ED, or F? A. Okay, so maybe what's another option? So it's just asking questions and letting them
You
figure it
must
out.
get to the airport a good 3.5 hours early.
Well, it's amazing how fast they picked it up, though. And now, I mean, they travel back and forth to Europe by themselves, right? And that they were doing that when they were in their mid-teens. So, I mean, of course, they get someone that goes with them on the plane. It's not like we just pump them on a plane. But you think about it, the most safe place you can get past TSA on a plane, as long as they get to the gate, they're good to go. But isn't that our goal, is to raise responsible young men that can be valuable to society and to contribute and serve? And we don't, that doesn't just magically happen at 18 or 21 years old. That is a lifetime of preparation for that. And I'm very blessed to have incredible young men as sons, but still at the same time, they need to be given responsibility. They need to, for instance, my youngest is in soccer, and it's his responsibility to put everything in our calendars and to manage all of that. And he doesn't do that well at
God,
times.
that's a good
So,
idea.
right, it's like, well, think about it. As parents, we just do this for them. My kids have packed their own lunch since day one of going to school. They've
Do they
always done it.
do they go to a supermarket and buy all the chocolate for it?
No, yeah, you'd think they'd do that because that's what we do. But no. We go through. We have a standard for what lunches look like, and how many greens, how many snacks, like all that kind of stuff. And they're responsible to pack their own lunch and get up on time. They've got their own alarms. We don't wake them up. And when it comes time for, if we're going on a camping trip for the Boy Scouts or they're going to a friend's house, they pack. I don't check anything. They miss it. They lost it. It doesn't matter, right? They have to learn this. They have to make the mistakes. And what better place than in the confines of your house to make these decisions and these things. So if it's not in the calendar, it doesn't happen. So if it doesn't put it in, it doesn't happen. Simple.
I love this. And it reminds me, so I want to ask like about the specific emotion that comes with empowering, because I the stories you just told remind me of like my youngest, right? He's
Mhm.
5. He likes to put his shoes on most of the time, and I'll be watching him because we're all getting ready to go out, and he'll start putting the shoe on the wrong foot, and maybe he'll get so far as like putting it completely on the wrong foot. Then he'll notice.
Mhm.
But there are two feelings that I get inside me, right? One is like, oh, I can offer him like love and help right now by just bending down and like helping, change his shoes onto the right feet. Or I can just wait and watch him figure it out and do it. And the latter, I feel like provides more of like you need to have this longer term view and vision to feel that there is for me as much love in it as there is in bending down to help him quickly correct
Yep.
with the shoes. And I'm just wondering, like for you, and people listening, like how do you convince someone who has that instinct, like, because this is one of the challenges that we hear all the time with parents, right? Like, how do we
Yep.
convince them to be like, serving them in that moment is actually, there's love in doing it the other way. There's love in letting them make the mistake and empowering them.
Yeah.
How have you kind of managed that evolving set of feelings, and how does it manifest for you?
A great question, Jeff. And I'm amazed, not amazed. I respect the fact that you have the awareness to know there are options, right? There's so many guys don't. They just work. So often we think we're just problem solvers, right?
Yeah.
Wife's got a problem. All right, I can solve it. And then you realize as you're married a little while that not everything is a problem to solve. Sometimes they just want to talk. Jeff, I don't understand, but sometimes they just want to talk, right?
Me too.
Right? And they just want to talk about stuff. And so my wife and I, and I'll get back to your question in a moment. My wife and I have this thing where I didn't learn this till during my personal growth journey. I started to realize that everything that she would bring, we go on walks each morning and hold hands and talk about what we're going to do for the day and what happened the day before and all that kind of stuff. And so many times Mr. Fix-It would show up. That's what we call him, Mr. Fix-It, right? And as soon as she says something like, oh, the horse did this at the barn, or this happened here, or this is happening at work, I immediately would jump in and I would be like, hey, this is how you fix it. And when she's like, I have a different way that I want to do it or something, I would get offended. I'd get pissed. I'd feel like I'm being rejected. Like, my idea is awesome. Why the hell wouldn't you just take it? Why? Like, that's not respect at all. Like, you should just listen to me and do exactly what I say. Right. And it's like, at a certain point, I realized that women are just wired different. They're wired. They like to discuss things and don't need outcomes on everything. They just sometimes want to just get it out. And Mr. Fix-It would come in and ruin the day. So we learned, and I'd say, look, when she said something, I was like, are you looking for me to fix this or you want me just to listen?
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, listening would be good. Excellent. I'm off duty now. Talk. Right. And then if it's like, I need to fix it. Okay. Let me get my brain in there. I was completely unaware that I had that going on. Right? I was completely unaware of how that was showing up and how it was actually driving a wedge between us because she didn't want to be fixed. She just wanted to be heard. And as men, we just like, well, yeah, that's why we're here. That's why we got muscles. We got ideas. We want to fix things. They don't want to be fixed. There's a lot of times they just want to listen. They just want you to listen and to be heard. And that's huge for the feminine, massive for them. So anybody out there listening that keeps running into that same cobweb that I kept running into, maybe ask that question first. And I'm sure she will appreciate you being aware that how you're showing up, and because she does need your help at times. I'm glad they still make jars with really tight lids, right?
Well, this goes back to leadership and change too, right?
Yeah.
Like if we want change, if we want someone to grow and develop, then they're not going to do so by being given a solution. They're going to do
right.
so by figuring it out, right?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And back to your question about with the kids and giving them those in your mind, having two options. Do I do it for them? Do I let them figure it out? Right. I guess the question you have to ask yourself and listeners as well is, how capable do you want your sons to be or your daughters to be? How capable do you want your kids to be? We have fear of, like, for instance, I don't know, let's just say alcohol, for instance. Like, some parents say, no alcohol whatsoever, your whole life. You can't have any of it. No, 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 it's bad, bad, bad. And then they go to college and you've heard the stories, right? They go crazy, right? They go nuts because they've never had an environment where they could learn how to manage these responsibilities. Because that's what they are, Jeff. They're responsibilities, right? There's consequences to these decisions. So, how do we do this? How do we figure this out as young people? We do it. We get in the trenches and learn, especially guys. We learn best with our hands. So the way that I've always looked at it is, where can this be a teaching moment? How can I empower my sons with this? And if, to your example of them putting the wrong shoe on the foot because they're just learning how to do this, let them walk in it for a while.
Yeah.
Right? That's what I would do. I'd be like, all right, kid, put your shoes on. Got them all laced up. Let's go. I know they're wrong. That's okay. It's like, something's not right with my shoes, Papa. I'd be like, well, take a look. And what do you think it could be? Look and look and look. They could be on the wrong feet. Okay, let's try them the other way and see what happens. And you put them on the other way and they're like, this is much better. Awesome. Sweet. What did you learn, son? Well, I learned if I put them on wrong, they just don't fit right. So what do we do next time that'll be different? Well, I just put them on right. And how will we know if they're right or not? And then maybe we sit down for a teaching moment and say, you see how your foot curves this way? You see how the shoe curves that way too? Maybe that's what you look at next time. Let's give it another shot. That's how I would approach that with everything in life.
No, I appreciate that. And the reason I was prodding on it is because I think for a long time, I just thought of it as, I need to be more patient. I need to be more patient. But what I'm hearing from you is actually a very different frame, which is, I'm loving through teaching and I'm loving through empowering. And if my in my head, like my values that I am instilling as a dad and generally in my family is teach, 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 empower, 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 then it'll come much more naturally that I am showing love by doing that. You know,
Right.
yesterday I was at the dentist for my children and it's a kid's dentist office, so it has this little game where after you see the dentist, you get a coin from the front desk, and you put it into the machine, and then this claw comes down, and you can pull out a toy, right? And my youngest, of course, had like only one toy in the giant thing that he wanted to get out, and of course, a different toy came out,
Mm.
and he sat on the ground and started crying, and at least 10 like kind, wonderful people, all employees, came by trying to like, can I help you? Can I do this? Can I do that? And for all of them, I said no. Like, this is
Mm.
an important moment. Like, he needs to be happy with what he has, or he needs to learn the resilience. And but what's so fascinating is I was really confident that I was doing the right thing. And yes, he was crying, but I was really calm about it. But I was being tempted. Like, here are 10 people coming by me,
Mm.
tempting me like, here's the easy way out. I can get another coin. I can put it in the machine. Tell me which thing he wants. Like, let me do this. And the whole time I was kind of like you, but I didn't frame it as well. I was just like, no, this is the right time to teach resilience because I had the energy. I
Mhm.
felt well rested enough that I could handle like a temper tantrum. And it worked out fine. But my bigger takeaway was how many people wanted to cut that off, right?
Mhm.
And so it's a challenge. And that's why emphasizing this part of our conversation, I feel to be so important because we're going to want to do these things or evolve in this way as a dad, and we're still going to run up against resistance that is the most like loving intended resistance. But if we don't set like in our minds the values, the types of adults we're trying to build, then we're not really going to know how to manage this situation on a consistent basis. So I really appreciate how you framed it. Really appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
Yeah.
There's a whole other level to this, specifically the men out there, that you can't preach what you don't practice, right? So you might want your son or daughter to grow up a certain way, but like say sitting around on the couch is not good, watching TV is not good, eating junk food's not good, eating fast food's not, whatever. Like whatever your list is of things that you think are not good, yet you stop at McDonald's, you watch TV every night, you drink alcohol like they're in front of the kids. Like it's all of those, like you're doing the things you say you're not supposed to. So, do as I say, not as I do. You can't give kids that vision. That's the problem.
Right.
They see through your BS. They see through it quickly. Like dad says I shouldn't be like that, but he is, and I love him. So why wouldn't I? Like
Yeah.
so much of this is self-control. And as men, we need to grow into this. We need to grow into realizing that if we want to be that model for our children, we need to live it. If we talk about discipline with our kids, about being disciplined out doing stuff and picking up their room, your room better be clean too. You better be actually doing. If you talk about being healthy is important and working out's important, they better see you working out or know you do. Not say it's good for you. Go to soccer, kid, it's good for your body, but then you don't. Right. So you have to live in the model that you're trying to teach them. That makes it stick. That gives it a foundation. They're like, wow, I respect my parents. I love my parents. So what they do, I'll probably pick some of it up. Maybe not till later in life. Maybe they'll push away from it all during childhood. And then later in life, they'll be like, but my parents were always full of energy and excited each day and always smiling. Like, what did they know that I didn't know? That like I'm struggling right now, and they'll go back to that model. So you have to live within the guardrails of where your values and principles are, and you have to stand with them, even especially when it's hard, especially when things are tough. To stand by that, they'll see that. So your words have some weight, but what they see and what they witness in your model has 10 times the amount of weight in how you're going to influence your kids in the future. So holding to your point earlier, it's about when you're in that dentist office and your kid was breaking down, how many times does that happen to parents, right? All the time.
Yeah.
It's, are you staying on your surfboard? Are you staying straight and focused on your principles? Or are you ready to give in because it's easy? Because the flesh wants the easy, right? It wants the comfort. It wants the simple thing. And I'm sure those 10 of the people that came in the room to help out had the best intentions. They
100%.
just wanted to help. And that is beautiful. but they couldn't possibly know what you're trying to do. So it's great that you stood your ground with that and that he learned something. The thing about I hope, yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? All these things which seem very small now eventually stack up. They accumulate like snow,
Yeah.
and they become what your children see as something to aspire to, right? And it's these little moments that you take the time and think, I'm going to take the hard road, but it's the right road. And not be like, I'm so busy with work. I've got so many things going on. Wife and I just had an argument. I've got, screw it. Like, just give them the candy. Just put another quarter in the machine, just to let it go because that's the easy, comfortable way. Your kids see that and they know it. So it's about being truthful. It's about being purposeful, knowing where your guardrails are and not just bouncing around kind of free ball in this thing we call life, going after every pleasure you can to try to escape reality and the pressure of responsibility. It's by grabbing responsibility around it, it's giving it a big bear hug because it's not going anywhere.
Absolutely. This is making me think because this afternoon I take my son every month to get an allergy shot because now they have a really interesting way to immunize your kids against allergies once they understand exactly what they are for external allergies, not food related ones. Anyway, he'd been coming home for about 4 months after getting this shot once a month, and just complaining for like 3 days that his arm hurt and that he
Mhm.
and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take him to the next one. I hadn't taken him, and I go, and it's a very old doctor and a very old nurse, and what I see happen as the process, I'm just kind of observing. They're getting him ready for a shot, and they're saying all the kind of cliche old things that we say to boys, like, all right, just you have the courage, you can do it, like just take one deep breath, it won't hurt that much. And I literally just kind of yelped and was like, no, you know what, if this is going to hurt you, that's okay, and however you want to express that, like express it with me. I'm here. Like, this seems like it's a big deal for you, and I want you to be happy, just like expressing it and knowing that I'm here and no matter what. So don't listen to them for how you should engage on this situation, nor me. Just do it however you want. So he goes, he has the shot, he's like, cries a little bit, but that's it. And then magically, he doesn't complain a single time for
Mm.
like about his arm hurting for the next 3 days. And I kid you not, every other shot he complained how his arm hurt.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it's really about how we show up for them, right? It's about
Yep.
like letting them have their emotions and not starting at this age, right? Where you and I originally learned about that we have to be stoic and that courage is
Yep.
no emotion. And so again, I find it really powerful how you talk about this evolution from kind of point A to point B where you are in your fatherhood, and I would be quite honored to meet your kids. It sounds like they'd be really wonderful boys. So very
Thank you.
cool. Yeah.
Right back at you, bro.
Thank you very much. So, one final question we always like to ask. Fatherhood is messy, and so I want you to think back to when your kids were younger. What like kind of icky, bodily fluid story do you have
Mm.
about your kids from a young age? We're collecting some interesting ones these days.
Well, I mean, there's plenty of those with diapers and all that fun stuff and blowouts and the most inconvenient times and cars stinking and quickly and all that kind of stuff, right? But I think the one that sticks out when you say that, the first thing that hits my brain is this idea that my father never changed a diaper,
Mm,
right? And when I got married, we never really had that conversation, right? And then kids come along and my wife's like, all right, well, baby needs to be changed. I'm like, yeah, so, right? And she's like, well, aren't you going to help? And I'm like, I don't do that stuff. And she's like, well, we need to talk about that, right? This is a two-party deal here. And I'm like, and so it took me a while to get used to the idea of this being a more of a team effort,
mm,
specifically in the diaper side of things, and not be just all her. And um, we worked through it. It took a little bit for me. There was still some hostility inside of me, feeling like I have to do this. But what I wasn't getting from it, and what I eventually got from it, is the fact that I get to spend this time with my kids, right? This is a time where we can have a lot of fun. And in the beginning, it wasn't that way. In the beginning, I was pissed off because I felt like I had to do it. And then I was like, after a while, I'm like, this is just some of the best times. They're giggling and laughing and peeing in the air and like we're all like all that kind of stuff, right? And I'm like, I'd be missing out on all of this stuff. But it was my ego, again, my framing, my modeling of what was in the past. And you know, we get this beautiful, blissful opportunity to become masters of meaning. Tony Robbins talks about this, become a master of meaning, right? Our minds, we see things in our environment, things that happen to us, for us, around us, and we wire meaning subconsciously to it. And most of the time we're, again, subconscious. We're not even aware of the meanings that we're associating them. So when we become masters of meaning, we can start taking that process apart. Like for instance, when it comes to changing a diaper, like I have the choice in being like, this isn't for me. The event, there's three parts to it. The event, the emotion, the conclusion. So the event is, I got to change a diaper. The emotion is, this is not my responsibility. And the conclusion is, I'm being forced to do this. That's one story. That's a framework for a story that was in me for a while. And I had the opportunity as I became more aware of this idea, and I wasn't aware back then, but now I can look back and see it this way, is that the event is the changing the diaper. The emotion, stop, breaks. What do we want to apply to that? What emotion do we want to connect this opportunity to? Is it the opportunity to connect with our child and to love and to giggle and all of that? Or is it going against my sense of a man, that this is what men do, right? So the conclusion then you can rewrite to being, I'm a great dad that loves his children and that's willing to jump in and help the wife do stuff around the house, right? So you get the opportunity. Every listener gets this opportunity to be more aware as you become more aware of life, of your emotions, of how you react and respond to things. If you can see the event coming, you slow it down. You say, I get the opportunity to wire the emotion I want to this event. Because you could say subconsciously, immediately negative, or you can try to find the good in it, become a master of meaning, and then the conclusion changes. Right. Absolutely. So I say this as a little framework to any listeners out there that find themselves in a pattern of negativity where they go to the negative. If you can be aware enough to feel that coming on and see that coming on, that negative feeling, if you know that this thing triggers you, right? Trigger traps and templates. If you know that this is a trigger for you, something is a trigger. Let's just say changing a diaper is a trigger for you. You need to be aware and say, oh, okay, I see that coming. Got it. What new emotion am I going to wire to that? Something empowering. And then what new conclusion can I come up with? And it changes your life, bro. Like it changes your life. That works across the board through business, through life. See the event, employee comes to you with a problem. They're constantly coming to you with problems. That's the event. The emotion is, I'm frustrated every single time. Why does he or she keep coming to me with the same damn problem? Oh my God, can't they just think for themselves? Or that's the emotion of frustration. Or you can be like, I've got a team of people that are here doing amazing stuff. We're all rowing in the same direction. They're just a little confused right now. How can I step in as a leader and help that? Different conclusion, right? We have the choice. We paint that picture every day, every moment that things come through our mind if we can be aware of it. So that's what I want to conclude this with, this idea of that you are the one in charge of those things, that you have the power, if you're aware enough and you want to change the way you approach things.
Thank you, Joshua. That is perfect. And as you said, if you can do that about diapers, you can do it about
anything.
Awesome. Joshua, thank you so much for sharing about your journey through fatherhood. I hope this inspires a lot more dads to kind of figure out where they are on that journey map for themselves. And by all means, reach out to me, reach out to Joshua. All the details will be in the notes for our podcast today. And thank you very much.
Can I add one thing, Jeff, as we're wrapping up?
Yeah.
So fathers specifically out there listening, one thing I've learned on my journey that has changed the way that I approach fatherhood is to not just forgive others around me for things they may have done to me or for me, or however I've created the conclusion around that, but to forgive myself. All the years of regret that I felt from not showing up for my children in the beginning, emotionally, physically, I was there. Emotionally, I wasn't there. I wasn't present. It wasn't until I, through the grace of God, forgave myself for being that person and stepped into the new version of myself, until I forgave me personally for that, knowing that I only did what I did because that's what I knew. That's what I watched my father do and his father do, and they did the best they could. Until I forgave all of that and specifically forgave myself, I finally got to live again and be showing up to my kids fully present. But it was that weight, that burden of this regret and unforgiveness that kept holding me back.
Oh,
So,
you
gentlemen,
left the best part for the end, my friend. I would have loved to talk a little bit more about this. I love that because it is true. Our shame holds a lot of dads back, and so I think what you're saying right now is equally powerful, as powerful as anything you've said today. So I really, really appreciate you closing with it.
and there's always, gentlemen, there's always room to start again. Your kids are very malleable. You didn't break them. And we are just figuring it out as we go. We didn't get the manual. We don't know all the rules. Every child is different. We have 2 children, same recipe, different results, different people, right? So we're not going to get it all right. And it's okay if you don't get it all right. They're very malleable, like I mentioned. So if you mess up or you show up or you get short with them or you do something that you're not proud of, just pick it back up and do it again. Not the same thing, obviously. Correct and move forward, right? Your kids will forgive you deep down. Don't hold that guilt, that shame inside of you. There's no room for that. Forgive yourself and move on. Tomorrow's a better day.
Awesome. With that, Joshua, thank you very much. And that's a wrap on today's Ambitious Dads podcast.
Thank you, Jeff.